are high. Every bet a test who will survive. Chasing stacks, outlast the crowd. Only the strongest left now. Who's ready to win? This is more than gambling. Let's start the show. It's Last Man Standing.
Welcome, everyone, to Last Men Standing, the Circa Survivor Podcast. I am Tony Farmer. He is Jason Anik. We are live, and we're going to be talking about the Week 8 carnage. There was a lot of it this week. We're also going to be previewing every single game on the NFL slate from a Circa Survivor perspective, so you're not going to want to miss our analysis and discussions about those games. Jason Anik, how you doing over there, brother?
Dude, great. And Wednesday night, 7 Eastern, 8 Eastern, my favorite time of the week. Give me it a day earlier. I almost came at you like, let's do this Monday night. I think your original instinct to come at twice a week and do interviews during the week. I'm telling you, this show is not going to be once a week much longer. I'm telling you, there's just too much to talk about. I am thrilled to be here a day early, bro.
Absolutely, man. Glad to have you. I know you had a little bit of a tough Circa Survivor weekend, so we're going to get right into it with how we each did this weekend. I got through with with a couple on the Colts and the entry in my name. I've got a couple partners as well. Let folks know where you landed this weekend and how things went.
We gone. We've been eliminated. I am no longer in the Circa Sports Survivor Contest. So I'm going to just tell you, right? Oh, I don't even know where to begin. We were on the Bengals. We were on the Cincinnati Bengals. And Tony, I could do 30 minutes on this, but I'm just going to start. I just want to tell you.
We got no time limit, man.
Exactly. I just want to start by telling you, because we were in a unique position in terms of the teams available. And you had said last week, do you feel a little bit jealous that you don't have the Colts available? Let's rewind. I said, no, yes. Yes, Tony, I'm jealous I don't have the Colts available. It's so interesting. You put out that graphic last week on Twitter. Falcons-Bengals, which button do you push? Either one eliminated you from this contest. So what I'll tell you, Tony, the teams that I had used, I thought, we had 4 entries. We're down to 1 entry. But this one particular entry, there were some good things about it. What's up, Dixon? But some bad things about it. So we used, in this order, Eagles, Cardinals, Seahawks, Patriots, Colts, Packers, Panthers. So for us, Patriots weren't available this week. Colts, obviously, you knew weren't available.
Yep.
So the Falcons, my brother was steadfast. I talked about it last week. He wanted nothing to do with the Falcons. And thank God, right? Because that's not a bad beat. That feels like a bad pick. And I don't think I'm going to just give you all my thoughts on the Bengals, right?
Yeah.
My biggest disappointment is that avoiding the Falcons didn't get me through on the Bengals, right? I was very happy that I didn't lose sleep. We made the right. I'm happier with the Bengals selection than the Falcons, right?
Good call.
But just a couple things about the game. So Trey Hendrickson, who was in the game early and was extremely banged up and limited and slow and couldn't do anything for the Bengals defense. When he left the game, it got even worse. I don't know if I've ever seen a more porous defense in my life. The live wagers in my account on the Jets cleaned up a big part of this.
Nice work.
At one point, they put on the screen 90% probability of win rate for the Bengals. And I'm like, that should be flipped around. I've never seen the Bengals couldn't stop them on any play. And I'll tell you what, Nick Mangold passing away, that news coming out early in the morning, there was a vibe in that Jets locker room. They played for one another. They played for their head coach. And hats off to Aaron Glenn for going for two over and over again. But Zach Taylor late in that game, the Bengals were running the ball. Samaje Perine and Chase Brown running the ball all day long. Had they taken the ball out of Flacco's hands, they very well could have continued to run the ball. Hindsight's 2020. Jets were very impressive, supremely motivated. But what I want to say to you, right? A couple things. So for those of you that don't know, I met Tony last year doing the huddle, and I wasn't in on OddsShark. I wasn't in this Survivor contest. And every week on the pre-show, I couldn't wait to talk to Tony Farmer about this contest. So I'm going to tell you right now, and I'm glad you're living, Elijah, but I'm still fucking living because I love this contest, right? And life goes on. I'm 47 years old. I've put it in the proper compartment. But I'll tell you, I was just as excited prepping this show as I always am. And I was happy about that, Tony, because I didn't know that. I'm almost done here. But I said this to you at the top, right? I'm not one of those handicappers or bettors that loves talking about things I do right. I'll talk about things I do wrong all day. But I have to tell you one thing about this day, Tony, because you know that my brother John put up most of the money. He was controlling most of this entry. And he was very aggressive this year, right? And I had a lot of teams available to myself, Tampa, Buffalo, Denver, right? So my brother texted me after the game, and I didn't fully remember this. So I guess the lesson is to be careful betting on bad teams with hopes of saving good teams. You wanted Buffalo. So what I'll tell you, John had final say in fucking Abu Dhabi, me in the United States, but I did want Buffalo. I made the decision this week, in my opinion, with my brother, to stop looking so much at the future value with this one entry and get it through. I didn't think Buffalo was going to lose 3 straight. That game, even though on this show, I think maybe we, thought it could be a tighter game. I just liked Buffalo. So what I would tell you, my brother overwhelmed me. The Bengals, it is what it is. You lose and go home. But what I will tell you, I had a lot of options. I could have used Denver week 10, right? You said if you have Buffalo, if you have Buffalo and Denver available to yourself, you got to have one of them for week 10. I certainly would have the Broncos. So it's a tough pill to swallow, Tony. But I learned a lot. And the final thing I'll say, I know I'm rambling. My brother said to me, Tony, which I love, he's like, the most important thing we can do is to continue to play this entry out on our map so that we learn for next year. And I was really happy. Yeah, John cost us a bag. But I was happy that he said that, because our commitment to this contest is not once and done. It's an annual thing, more and the better. I'm done, but fuck me.
Kudos to John, by the way, because that's not easy to do for some people, to be like, hey, you wanted the Bills. This is on me. Like that's hard to do. So kudos to him for owning that. Love you sharing that story, because that's sort of some behind the scenes that a lot of people don't get to see. Love that. That game, and I don't want to get too much into it because we want to do a kind of our week 8 recap later. But that game was just torturous with the 2-point conversion that looked like at first it wasn't. And first of all, how about the balls on Aaron Glenn? We spent so much time on this damn show talking about what a terrible coach he was, and then he makes this excellent call to go for 2. It looks like they don't get it, and they do. Just really an excruciating way to lose the game. This Jets game reminded me, Jason, who were they playing earlier this season when Aaron Glenn had the dance on the sideline and then the blocked field goal? Week 2, I believe. The same week as the Packers carnage.
Bro.
It reminded me a lot of that game where they just kind of came out of nowhere at the end. I don't even want to say they were hanging around, because I think they were somewhat left for dead at some point, and then they just came back. It was awful.
So the 2-point conversions, right? What I will say, right? Everyone loves criticizing certain decisions. And I think that this league has evolved to the point 2-point conversions are different. We go for it much more. Back in the day, 80s, 90s, watching the NFL, extra point all day. So there were certain people criticizing Aaron Glenn, but when you're 0-7 or 0 and whatever, I loved the aggression in that spot to put them in a position to cut it to 7 at one point and then cut it to 6 and go. And I think it puts pressure on the other team.
Absolutely.
And ultimately, I think you got nothing to lose there. But
yeah,
the one point I did want to ask you about, and for me, right, I actually don't look like this like a bad beat, because, bro, I saw it going that way. But the way Cincinnati was running the ball with both of those backs, I just thought Zach Taylor really was very good until that last drive play calling. He throws a sort of high risk pass on first down, very predictable run on second down, and then you're up against it. And did you see Flacco go into the locker room before that drive? Like he was
yes, I did.
And I wanted Jake Browning at that, dude. And I wanted Jake Browning at that point, because clearly Flacco's compromised. I mean, Tony, I see. Now we go. Now I'm reliving it again. I ain't gotten over it.
They showed Joe Flacco going to the locker room at that point. I don't know if I agree with you on. I mean, if I feel like most people would want Flacco, but we didn't know what was wrong with him. Although, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm watching the game at the book with no volume. Did you know at the time? I still don't know what the hell was wrong with Flacco.
No, and I had a lot going on, but no, I'm not. Look, Jake Browning's trash. But the point being is, if he's going to maybe he had to take a shit, right?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Could have been,
so it could, but part of me seeing Jake Browning is, in my mind, all we're doing is handing the fucking ball off. The Jets could not stop
good point.
Could not stop anything they were doing, and the fact that you had both of those backs. So anyway. We could do an hour on this, but that game, that game was absolutely torture to watch.
So how are you doing? I mean, you obviously have a very positive attitude about this. You're like, hey, I can sleep at night. I made the right call. Tough loss. Can't wait for next year. You have a great attitude, finishing out this podcast, even though you're not in it, et cetera. But talk to me about like the emotions the next day. I've always said that, and believe me, I've had some fucking brutal beats in Circa Survivor. You guys have heard them before. I'm not going to go off onto a tangent, but believe me, I've had some tough ones. It's like you have this thing, this entries that you nurture, and you think about them literally every day for so many consecutive days, and then poof, they're gone. it's a weird thing to wrap your head around. And I see a lot of people on Twitter like struggling with it, understandably so. Talk to me about your first time in Circa Survivor, sort of. How would you describe the feeling the next day?
Don't get it twisted. Like, I'm cool, but I was pissed, right? And it's also different, right? When we lost our one entry on the Cardinals in week 3, when they lost to Tennessee or whatever that week was, right? Week 5. Or forgive me, but the Cardinals, that game that everybody lost, we had one entry on it. And when you're still alive, it doesn't bite you. So when you're down to that last entry, Tony, I've experienced something different as a sports gambler these last 2 weeks than ever before. Picking Carolina week 7, where I felt dead before it started, and watching this game, I've never felt like I've just never had those feelings before. So yes, I was pissed, most without question. But what I'll tell you is a couple things. Number one, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee right now for Dirty Boxing. So that was a nice page turn, shift a little focus there.
Yep.
But also, I'm a diehard New England Patriots football fan, and I haven't been able to focus on them during a season for a long time. So they're getting a little bit of my love too. There's a lot to talk about there. But Tony, you can be sure that I was upset and pissed and all this, but you also have to make a choice. Are you just going to wallow in it? And Tony, I'm telling you right now, I swear to God, if you could get inside my head, you know how genuinely interested I was in your entries last year. I said before the season started, at some point, you're going to win this whole fucking thing. So I came at this a little bit from a different angle. Now I'm all in. I can't wait to put as many entries as possible. But Tony, I am into your entry. And for you, we've talked about you. You are through. There's only 2,000 entries left. Let's go, baby.
Let's go. Love it. Love the support. Absolutely. Let's recap some of that carnage for this week. In addition to the Bengals game that we spent so much time talking about, 1,387 go down on the Falcons. About 51% of the field on those two games. Now there's 2,057 left. Implied value of each entry, $9,100. Believe me, over on the Survivor Sweat Marketplace, they're going to be going for a lot more than that. If Mike, if you can pull up that graphic from VSiN, because here it is. This is from a numbers game, Gil Alexander show over on VSiN, kind of putting in context. If people are curious, wow, 88% of the field is gone. How does that, relate to past seasons? Well, you can see here, on pace with 2023. Obviously, 2024 was an outlier. That was the year last year where it was just complete carnage from the start. A little behind that pace, but it's not unheard of. We're kind of somewhere in the middle. Not the craziest year, not the most conservative year. So I just think that graphic puts it into context. Thanks for the folks over at VSiN and Gil Alexander show and Numbers Game. They do a great job. I get excited whenever they talk Survivor. I listen to their show intently no matter what, but when they talk Survivor, I turn the volume up a little further and really tune into it. I love those guys. But I
know that you feel for me, but tell me, was this not one of the best Sundays you've ever experienced rooting against others?
It was bittersweet, man. Honestly, like I'm texting, my buddy, and he's got the same interests as me, and he's like, "Dude, this could be a big day." And I swear to God, I was like, "Oh man, I hate that I'm gonna make a big advance in Circa Survivor and get all my entries through when Jason loses." You know what I mean? Like I hate that. And then my stepdad was on the Patriots. And so that game, to start with, eventually the Patriots won easily, but like I was a little worried about him at first too. And then so you always want your boys to come across the finish line with you, but you can't have it all in any ways. But yeah, it was a great day for me to have the Colts, get through on the Colts. My partner had one on the Chargers on Thursday, which felt great.
Bro.
But it was a wild day.
Can I stop on the Chargers there? Because, Tony, I have to say, right, like in terms of zigging and not zagging, that's a lesson that I learned. I didn't pay close enough attention on Thursday. I'm just being honest with you. I didn't, when you said that there was an entry on the Chargers, that you had texted us saying you have an entry, I was like, bro, that's just a beautiful spot. And so for me, you don't have that opportunity on the board if you're sort of, taking the Thursday night game with a grain of salt.
Yeah, and I will say this, the entry that the Chargers were used on did not have the Colts available. And if the Colts were available, I think that entry would have had the Colts. So don't give me too much credit. We needed to zig, And that was, one of the options is Zig. But it
that's
feels good when only 16 people are on it, for sure.
And I don't mean to interrupt, but that's the perfect example because we didn't have the Colts available to us. And by the time I went on Friday night, Saturday, the Chargers weren't available to me. You feel me? Whereas had that been a Sunday game, I think about Justin Herbert at home against Carson Wentz versus Joe Flacco. It is what it is.
Well, and we also just got through all that Thursday carnage of back-to-back Thursday carnage, which,
true. Good point.
Is scary anyways. But yeah, don't beat yourself up over that one, man. Good run. First year for sure. I'm excited to talk to you further throughout this season. But yeah, just crazy, man. 51% of the pool gets knocked out. Absolute freaking carnage. 4 no picks, by the way, Jason. 4 no picks. How do you get to week 8 and still fail to submit your pick? We had Jeffrey Benson on last week. He gave us some insight into, one of the reasons that happens so often is because people don't know the rules. And yeah.
Can you imagine some of the stories behind the scenes about these no picks? People like ready to murder their proxies, even though it's not the proxy's fault, right? Can you imagine some of these guys like Saturday afternoon being like, "Oh no!" I can't even imagine.
Right. How many people have had a no pick because they're sitting in jail? How many people had a no pick because they had phone problems or car problems on the way to Circa to, swipe at the kiosk? I mean, I'm sure people have been on benders. I mean, Vegas is a city with a lot of distractions. You know what I mean? I'm sure people have, been out a little too late and maybe some substances involved. I'm sure. I said this jokingly once, and I'm like, it'd be a great documentary to just focus on the no picks because I'm sure there are some ridiculous stories for sure.
There's the bullshit cushion reference out of Stevie Pan. I love it. That was the term Tony coined last week.
A reference from last week. Yeah, appreciate that very much. All right, so moving on here. Let's talk a little bit about our Splash Sports contest as well.
Yes.
We got bounced in that as well. The Bengals took us out in the Bloody Survivor contest. For those of you who are in the Splash Sports contest and still alive, congratulations. Jason and I are not. We will be joining, however, the extra Bloody Survivor competition. Also a $100 entry over at Splash. So far, 316 people have joined. $500,000 pool we're looking forward to. Guys, you got to pick 3 teams per week from now through the end of the season. So you heard my reaction to, holy crap, we got to do 2 every week last week. Now we got to do 3. At the end of the show, Jason and I are going to do a little workshop. I honestly don't know where we're going to land for those 3 picks. Jason doesn't either. We're going to work through it together. And maybe, I don't know if you want to tell us or maybe you want to fade us since we did so bad last week in the Bloody Survivor, but you can maybe use some of our conversation to help you come up with your decision, I hope. I hope that's the way it works.
I appreciate Splash Sports keeping me in the game. You can be sure. Like, I still got a valid interest here. But so, Tone, if you use 3, you can't use those 3 teams that next week, right? Creating a 3-team money line parlay this week might sound simple, but when you roll it over the following week, those 3 teams aren't available to you.
Absolutely. All right, let's go ahead and roll a spot from Splash Sports.
Sports fans, don't miss out on the action right now at splashsports.com. Join leagues and enter massive contests with guaranteed multi-million-dollar prizes. Splash Sports brings the contest experiences straight to your phone in over 40 states with even more ways to play, compete, and win all season long. Finally, a way to play the games we know you love against your friends for real money. So get in the game and download now on iOS or Android or play on the web at splashsports.com.
Hey, Tony, real quick.
Yeah.
The other contest that I just want to let, it was a contest that we got in. It's called Sunday Fun, right? That is another one.
Oh no, that's not the Splash thing. That's
Excuse me, forgive me.
You're good.
Joe O's Survivor Reload. That is the other. That's the other one. So Joe O's Survivor Reload. Thank you, Splash.
And that's Joe Osborne, I believe. So
no way.
I think that's him.
It's Joe Ostrowski.
Oh, my bad. Okay. I just made an assumption.
I was like, I'll tell you what, if it's my guy Joe Osborne, I'm
I thought it was, and I thought
Couple
that's why we jumped into that one. But okay, that makes more sense now. Cool. I like this comment here about the Splash Sports contest. He says it feels impossible to take 3 times extra bloody picks and not use the top 2 or 3 premier picks. Absolutely. Like when you got 10-point spreads on 2 or 3 games, how do you not want to throw those in to your portfolio for the week? Absolutely. But a lot of strategy there to consider for sure.
Yes.
Jason, beyond that Bengals game and the crazy Falcons game, do you have any takeaways from week 8? I've got a couple things on my mind, but do you have anything else that you want to cover?
Go ahead. I got one, but you go first.
One, I just got to offer an apology to the Packers and Packers fans, because last week I came on here and one of my takeaways was I'm glad I've used the Packers on a couple of my entries because they didn't look very good against the Cardinals. Well, as bad as they looked against the Cardinals 2 weeks ago, they looked really damn good last week. And I'm on board the Packers again all of a sudden because the Packers looked absolutely incredible and impressive. So that's one of my takeaways. Drake May is the real freaking deal. I said on this show, my only concern with that Patriots-Browns game was the fact that Drake May was going up against the best defense he's faced this year. What does he do? 18 for 24, 282 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception, and passing the eye test. The dude has a beautiful deep ball. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. He had a play. It was a little Patrick, love that photo. It was a little Patrick Mahomes-like flip. I think it was 3 weeks ago. That if Patrick Mahomes did it, it would be all over SportsCenter, and we wouldn't stop talking about it. It'd be all over Twitter. Drake May is the real deal. I could not respect him more. And he's in the top 5, I think maybe even 3rd or 4th in MVP odds right now as well, which is just insane. Considering this is the guy, Jason. Drake May is the guy last year that the Patriots didn't want to start in the beginning of the season because their offensive line was so bad. They basically didn't want to ruin his confidence. Now Drake May is in the running to be the MVP of the National Football League. Holy cow. And my last takeaway is the Dallas Cowboys defense is really bad. They're an over team from here on out. I may just blindly bet overs in Cowboys games for the rest of the season because their offense is solid, quite above average actually, but their defense is so bad, especially when they have, these injuries in their secondary. They're going to be interesting to see if they pick someone up at the trade deadline. But yeah, those are my takeaways. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I have plenty to talk about Drake May and the Patriots. I'll get into that when we talk about the Falcons-Patriots game this week. But one thing I want to tell you that I have good information on, believe it or not, Gerard Mayo wanted to start Drake May last year and didn't get the opportunity to do it. So say what you want, and Gerard Mayo doesn't belong being a head football coach, but I have very good information that was the case. So that's interesting.
Wow.
But I don't think Drake May would have been able to do what he's doing he is being set up for success. Josh McDaniels has pitched 7-8 perfect games. But I'll talk more about Drake May. But one takeaway that I have from this week that I just think is so interesting about this league, and it's not even from a Survivor takeaway. So the Bears plus 6.5 at the Ravens, all that misinformation with Lamar Jackson's injury. And as we find out he's going to be out and that line goes down to 2.5, it's one of those spots in this league, Tony, where I'm saying to myself, and I had Bears action. I didn't like the Bears anymore, if I'm being honest with you. This league is funky like that. There's a reason why the Ravens are still a 2.5-point favorite. It's not as if the line got flipped. Now, sometimes you can have a situation like this where the Bears would just stomp them. But oftentimes in these spots where everything looks like it's the perfect storm, I liked the Bears a ton in that game. There's a part of me that thought I maybe even like him better if Lamar plays a little rusty. Maybe they get up for it. Maybe they let down a little bit when Lamar wasn't walking through those doors. But it's fascinating when you see that type of line movement and it ends up going the other way.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing up the drama, if you will, surrounding I think the Ravens are going to get some sort of a penalty for this, the dishonesty. John Harbaugh, their coach, says it was an honest mistake, but luckily this happened a little before the deadline. I think for most people, even the proxies that have early deadlines, I think you still were able to maneuver. But stuff happens in Circa Survivor that is just. I remember, was it the COVID year? There was a quarterback. Someone out there in the comments remind me who it was. You woke up on Sunday morning and found out that a quarterback tested positive for COVID.
Wow.
Was it the Steelers? I don't remember. Someone remind me what game that was, because that's devastating, man. That's not your fault at all. What are you supposed to do? Predict that a guy was going to get sick the next? That is an aspect of this contest that talk about not being able to sleep at night. you make the right call and your starting quarterback wakes up sick and isn't able to play. When things happen after the deadline, it's kind of rough. It doesn't feel good. Let's go ahead and pull up these projections from Survivor Atlas for this week. I think this is maybe one of the more interesting weeks in terms of projections, because when you look at the top, Jason, we've got 84% of the pool on the top 3 teams: Rams, Chargers, and Packers. And then who's next, by the way? Holiday team Ravens, holiday team Lions. This week, I don't think this is a difficult week in Circa Survivor, but it is a pivotal, extremely pivotal week in Circa Survivor. What you do this week will have massive ramifications. You want to burn a holiday team? Okay. You want to burn the Chargers? You're not going to have them week 13. You want to use the Rams? You're not going to have them week 13. I mean, this is the kind of week that whoever wins Circa Survivor, I think, can look back on this week, even though there may not be a lot of carnage. Maybe there will. Even if there's not a lot of carnage, look back at this week and say, wow, that was a big one. That was a turning point in the season for a lot of people that could have had their grids go different ways. So we're going to get into that. I think those 3 big favorites are just fascinating, and it's going to be interesting to see where they land. And if Survivor Atlas's projections are accurate, they usually are. They're the best in the business in terms of projections, if you ask me, but it's just so hard to try to predict.
You guys lost tone areas.
It's just really hard to kind of, the job that Survivor Atlas has to try to predict some of these projections is really tough. So it's going to be interesting to see how accurate that is, even though they're the best in the business with doing those projections. So, and keep in mind, those projections from Survivor Atlas, they're going to change throughout the week. They're not static. They're going to send us updates. So heading over to survivoratlas.com, sign up if you haven't already. And yeah, before we move along here to our Thursday night game, I want to ask everybody out there, give us a little thumbs up. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Twitter, a little heart goes a long way. We appreciate that very much. Jason, you ready to jump into this Thursday night game?
I am, and appreciate all of you following us at Last Men Pod. Tony is building a juggernaut. Plenty of people with us tonight live. Yes, Tone, let's go.
Let's roll here. All right, Thursday night, Ravens. 75.6% of people have the Ravens available. I like this matchup a lot for the Ravens. I'm not a believer in the Dolphins just because they took out the Falcons. The Ravens, not only are they going to get Lamar Jackson back, but Ronnie Stanley, Nate Wiggins were limited in practice. I think they're going to be back as well. This game doesn't make a lot of sense for me in Circa Survivor, Jason. One, because I've used the Ravens on the majority of my entries and partner entries as well. And I also haven't been as diligent as I should have about the holidays. So I'm going to need Baltimore moving forward. I wish I had a little more flexibility like some other people. I went over to survivoratlas.com and found that 767 entries still have Philly, Baltimore, and Kansas City available. If I'm in that situation, if I'm one of those 767 people that have all 3 of those big favorites on Thanksgiving available, I might give the Ravens a little sniff here. I do like this matchup a lot, but also remember the Ravens played the Jets the week before Thanksgiving. There's some nice spots to use them later on in this contest. However, if 80-something% of the field is going to be on 3 teams, this is a nice EV spot here for the Ravens. Nice high point spread, and it's going to be low owned. So I see the appeal to the Ravens. We could talk on and on about Thursday games and how rough they've been for people this season. That is, I'm sure, in the back of a lot of people's minds. You have any interest in the Ravens here?
I don't. But I will say, I think when you talk about that Thanksgiving game, right? Bengals at Ravens. A lot of people did use the Eagles and maybe be hanging on to that game. But for me, for someone who's been eliminated from this contest, right? I have all sorts of teams available to me on the holidays, but guess what? I won't have the option to play because I didn't even make it to November. So I think that certain weeks, right? I think to your point, getting through this week, I think can give you some momentum, right? So I would maybe prioritize getting through this week. Given the way my board had laid out with the Lions available to me, I was going to maybe consider the Ravens here. But let me ask you a question.
You're good.
Okay. I just want to ask you a question, though. The Dolphins, right? I live in South Florida, right? If I'm a Miami Dolphins fan, gosh, I'm not rooting for them to win football games. I'm rooting for them to. From a Dolphins standpoint, what they put on film last week, if you wanted to play the Ravens, would that give you any pause?
It wouldn't. I really feel like that was more like, all right, let's start with the positive. The Dolphins coming into that game, everybody, myself included, was so concerned about the locker room, Tua's leadership, seemingly some tension between Tua and his head coach, right? So at least they've shown you it mustn't be that bad, right? If they can put together that kind of a performance. So there is some positives there, but I just wasn't impressed with the win. It wasn't like they were completely dominant, blew the Falcons away. It was a nice road win and good for them. But the Falcons are a different animal. Let's not forget, the Ravens are a different animal. Let's not forget the Baltimore Ravens, when healthy, are regarded as one of the best teams in the NFL. They lost week 1 to the Bills because of fumbles. They outplayed the Bills in week 1, and when they've got that entire defense rolling and when Lamar Jackson's playing, it's a damn good team. So I think the Dolphins are in trouble this week. I really do. I've got a bet already on the Ravens money line, Ravens teaser. I may add a Ravens point spread bet as well. I just love this matchup for them. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Ravens honestly win like 8 games in a row. The rest of their schedule is completely soft. By the way, they're still the favorites to win their division over the Steelers, even though they've only got 2 wins this season. I think everybody is kind of just expecting the Ravens to get rolling. I think it's going to happen, and I think it's going to start this week.
Made a lot of plays on defense last week, and I think from a momentum standpoint, right, we talk about 1 loss not becoming 2. This is where 1 win becomes 2 for the Baltimore Ravens. You win last week against a team that's hot and won 4 straight. Huntley in there. I love Baltimore. I had it at 7.5. It looks like it's moved to 8.5. I had that. That was, I saw DraftKings at 7.5 before we started the show. So
yeah. It's going to be interesting to see where this number lands and how many people are willing to burn the Ravens this week to get the EV, to be on an island-ish. That's a lot of sacrifice to sacrifice that future value. How many people are willing to do it? All right, next game up, we've got Bears at Bengals. 10-foot pole game of the week for me. I want absolutely nothing to do with this. 81.4% of people have the Bears available. 91% of people have the Bengals available. By the way, 33% chance of rain in this game, so keep an eye on the weather if you have any interest in this. But I just don't see how you could. The only reason you take this game, in my opinion, in Circa Survivor is if, obviously, you have a lot of conviction on one side, or you're just like, you know what? I think there's going to be carnage this week. 80-something% of the pool is on 3 teams. I want to be alone. And the Bears and Bengals don't have a lot of future value at all moving forward.
Totally agree.
So I see the appeal, but, that question that you and I have asked each other throughout the year, like, what are the teams that you don't have a good feel for that are kind of unpredictable? The Bears and Bengals are on that list for me. So I can't get behind it. But if you have conviction in this game, from a strategy standpoint, I get it. I don't have that conviction. I'm not going to take that kind of risk when there's big favorites on the board. And the other thing I'll add here, Jason, is we talk so often about, can you sleep at night? This is one of those where if there's 3 favorites of, 10 points or more and you've got 2 of them and you skip it and you go down with the Bears or Bengals here, that one's going to hurt. That one's going to hurt quite a bit for sure. Anything else to add on this game?
I couldn't agree with you more. I'll add a couple things. First point, fuck the Bengals. And I do think one loss becomes 2 here. I think their season ended with that game, that loss to the Jets. And I really do. I mean, I think any chance of Joe Burrow get right, that's when you sort of can't. So I think they might have needed a little momentum. And so for me, I'm going to look heavily at the Bears here just as a bet. But in Survivor, I'm with you, 10-foot pole.
And we've got Rachel chiming in and saying, boo, Bengals. Yeah. One thing we didn't really hit on, Jason, at the top when we talked so much about the Bengals. Remember, they were the team that knocked everybody out of Circa Survivor last year, starting in week 1 and then throughout the season. So this is now back-to-back years. The Bengals are just absolutely haunting people for sure. So I get that sentiment there, Rachel. chiming in and saying, boo, Bengals. A lot of people are feeling that way indeed. All right, let's go ahead and throw it over to our friends over at Survivor Sweat. We got a little commercial for you. If you're in Circa Survivor, you have to go to the marketplace at survivorsweat.com. You can shop for entries that other people have registered or sell a percentage of your entry. Get knocked out early and suffering from FOMO? Head over to survivorsweat.com today and see which entries are available for sale. Yeah, please do head on over to survivorsweat.com. Remember, they're not just a marketplace. They're also a proxy service. They've got some cool Survivor tools on their website as well. But the marketplace is going to be an interesting place this week, Jason. I haven't looked yet. I'm looking forward to, after the show, hopping on there and seeing what entries are going for. When you have a week like that of carnage, I'm thinking there's going to be a lot of sellers, people who are trying to be opportunistic and say, hey, my entry's worth a lot. I want to sell right now. But I think there's probably also going to be some buyers, because there's a lot of people who are knocked out and want to get back in this thing. So fascinating from a supply and demand standpoint, what the marketplace is going to look like as we move forward. Love the folks over at Survivor Sweat. They've been great supporters of the show. All right, moving on here. Vikings at Lions. Lions only 30.6% available, Jason. Tell me if I'm being prisoner of the moment here. Now, I have the Lions available on 0 entries. And every day I wish I had the Lions available. So maybe this is just from my FOMO lens. But I think the Lions might be the most important team in Circa Survivor moving forward. Because on Christmas, right now, there's no team I'd rather have on Christmas than the Lions against the Vikings. And they have a sneaky spot on Thanksgiving where I think they're going to be pretty low owned. And so where I'm going with this is, if I have the Lions available, if I'm one of those 30.6%, I sure as heck am not using it here. Might you get some EV because the point spread is decent and it's going to be low owned? Sure. But I'm not sacrificing the future value to get a good EV play this week. I'm not using the Lions. I do think they're going to win the game. I just think it's a mistake to use them in this spot. And by the way, besides the holidays, week 14 against Dallas doesn't seem like a terrible spot to use the Lions either, especially how bad we see that Cowboys defense playing. Dixon Sider chimes in and says, who's the quarterback for the Vikings?
JJ McCarthy, likely.
JJ McCarthy is going to be in there. Carson Wentz is now out for the season, by the way. So, yeah, anything you want to add here on this Lions-Vikings game? I got no interest in a certain
Yeah, so what I'll tell you is I saved the Lions, but they're not available to me anymore, Tony, because I'm not in the contest. Get it? And for those of you, if my internet's dying here, we're in Nashville, Tennessee. They want me to go plug into the router. Don't think I'm going to be able to do that. So doing my best here with the internet. But what I will say about the Lions, right? For someone who's been eliminated from this contest, and part of the reason I wanted to use the Bills last week, and I'm not trying to go down a big rabbit hole there, is because I had sort of made a little bit of a transition in terms of the holidays, right? Tony, your decision to not have the Lions available did keep you alive in 1 week of this contest, right? So sure. I do believe there are better options this week, even if you're not zigging when others zag. And I agree with you. If they're available to you and you've made it to week 9, I think you got to keep them in your back pocket.
Same page there. Absolutely. All right, let's move on. This week, I feel like there's 3 big games this week. We showed them on the projections: the Packers, the Rams, and the Chargers. This is the first of the big 3 that we're going to talk about for this week. 33% chance of rain in this one. Certainly keep an eye on that. These teams last played in 2023. Packers won that game 33-30 for whatever that may be worth. Different head coach in Carolina, so maybe that doesn't have that much value, but I just thought I'd throw that in there for you guys. 33.5% of people only have Green Bay available. That number is getting really low. And there are a lot of spots to use Green Bay later. They've got a spot week 11 against the Giants, week 12 against Minnesota, week 14 against Chicago, week 16 against Chicago. Ton of future value for the Packers moving forward. As I said at the beginning of the show, they looked really good this week. Let me read you some stats. Jordan Love, 360 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Tucker Kraft, 143 yards and 2 touchdowns on 7 catches. Rashawn Gary and Micah Parsons combined for 3 sacks, and they held the Steelers to 1 for 10 on 3rd down. Defense is looking really, really good in Green Bay. So I think there's a lot to like here for the Packers. I will probably be on the Packers with one of my selections in Circa Survivor. I like the game that much. However, if you ask me, like, what's a path for the Packers to lose this game, it's Rico Dowdle, the running back for the Panthers. You can start to read the tea leaves a little bit. And when Canales, the head coach in Carolina, is asked about the running back competition, he's saying, let me give you a little quote here. He says, "We cannot ignore that Rico has been exceptional in a couple games." I think he's starting to signal a changing of the guard, that they're going to give Chuba Hubbard less carries and more carries for Rico Dowdle. So the Packers gave up 5.2 yards a carry last week to the Steelers. You got this team that might start running the ball a lot better in Carolina. That's the one concern that I have here for the Packers. The reason I like it, and I'm probably going to go with the Packers, though, Packers play a lot better at home. The Panthers play a lot worse on the road. So there's a lot of boxes that are being checked here for me to like the Packers, but I'm not going to go overboard with the Packers in survivor pools because they have so much future value moving forward.
Great stuff across the board. A couple points that I'll just add to, right? I think the Packers are sort of done shit in the bed, whether it's losing to the Browns, the tie against Dallas. I think they're sort of done giving us sweats, if you will, right? And I think if you still have the Packers, I actually don't totally agree with you about the future value of the schedule, right? I don't see any value in the holidays. I think you agree. Packers at Lions, no thanks.
Sure.
But to me, the great spots left on the schedule are week 12 and week 14, home to Minnesota, home to Chicago. You mentioned those. Those are both division games. But I think some of those other games do get a little bit tricky for the Packers. So I guess for me, if they're available to me, I'm looking very hard at them here, just as you are with one entry.
Yep, good call. We got a couple comments here. What a lovely little response here from Elijah. Elijah says, best Circa Survivor pod available. Shit Survivor pod in general. Thank you so much for the kind words. And if you believe that, Elijah, if you haven't already, if you can hit that thumbs up button, we appreciate it. Jason, what were you going to say?
I just want to say, in terms of the Packers too, I actually think the galvanizing win going at Aaron Rodgers, right? I feel as though this probably brought that team together, so I think they're going to go on quite a run. And I think you got to remember, Micah Parsons, it's like they were a little choppy early in the year, but he was always sort of doing his thing. And when you line him up over center, forget about it.
Yeah, you got some predictions from me and Jason in this show about the rest of the season. Packers and Ravens are two teams that might be about to go on a run. I like this comment here from Jonathan. He says, James Cook destroyed the Panthers on the ground. He sure did. More than 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he looked really good in the process. He says he thinks Jacobs and Green Bay's running backs can do the same. Absolutely. That's a good call. I think they can have a nice day on the ground as well. This is one of the big three. I think people's paths are going to dictate how much Green Bay is used this week and how much you might use them. I agree with the point that you made. Like, some of those games that I said are like not the sexiest games. Like, oh my God, I can't wait to use Green Bay against Chicago. Right. But some of the weeks that Green Bay has matchups like that, it's the first, second, or third game for that week in terms of like the point spread. So, and win probability. So
I hear you, but quickly, right? Their home games, right, are Philly and Baltimore, right? And you talk about them being better at home, so those are tough. And the road games, the easiest one is at the New York Giants. And Tony, you're not rushing to play teams at the Giants necessarily, right? That's a little dangerous based on past years. So anyway.
In fact, to your point, when Ken Rutgers, former Green Bay Packers player, was on our show earlier this season, we asked him, hey, what's one game on the schedule that scares you a little bit from the Packers' perspective, a game that they're going to be the favorites? And he picked that one out against the Giants. So very good point. Very good point. Maybe some of the Packers' future value is a mirage. That's something for people to roll around in their heads out there and make up their own minds on. Good stuff. A couple of their injuries just for people to be aware of with the Panthers. Brady Christensen, not a household name. I bet there's a lot of people in our audience right now who don't know who this guy is. He's only given up 1 sack this year. He's a guard for the Panthers, and Pro Football Focus has him as the 9th best pass blocking guard. So he's now out for the year. They're going to miss him, I think, in Carolina for sure.
He's a household name in the Tony Farmer household, though. That's a different household.
There we go. Moving on here. Broncos at Texans. These teams played last in 2023. Same head coaches, and the Texans won that game 22-17. 71.5% of people have Houston available. 31.8% of people have Denver available. This is another nomination for the 10-foot pole game of the week for me. I don't want anything to do with this. I think these teams both have some sneaky future value moving forward. The Broncos are an underdog on Christmas, so you always want to kind of keep them in your pocket if you can. The Texans play the Titans later this season in a week that there's not a lot of great options available to a lot of people on a lot of paths, so myself included. So I have no interest in using either of these teams, even if I did have a lot of conviction, and I don't have a lot of conviction, so it's a no-brainer for me. No thanks.
Yeah, totally agree. I lean Denver. If y'all are looking for a pick, I would stay away from this. Denver also next week home to the Raiders. So pretty decent spot in week 10.
And yeah, very decent spot in week 10. It's a Thursday game, but in my opinion, as you've heard me say the last couple of weeks, Denver and Buffalo are far and away the two best options that week. And so you're not firing here on the Broncos unless you have the Bills. I can't imagine. And even if you do, I still don't think it's a great play. Moving on here, Falcons at your New England Patriots. 51.7% of people have the Patriots available. I'm expecting less than 1% of the field will have the Patriots here. Low-owned team, if you like the matchup. I don't fault you for doing it because it's going to get you on an island in a weird week where 84% of the people are projected to be on the top 3 teams. I just think I'd rather use the Patriots against the Giants. I'd rather use the Patriots against the Jets. I'd rather use the Patriots late in the season against the Dolphins when nobody else has them available. 10% chance of rain in this game. And I want to hear your thoughts on this game, Jason, but I want to start with a question, if you don't mind answering this question first. Do you have any concern about Ramondre Stevenson? Because I haven't watched Patriots games that closely. Box score wise, though, yards per carry the last 4 games, 2.0 yards per carry against the Bills, 1.4 yards per carry against the Saints, 4.9 yards a carry. That's decent against the Titans, but it's a bad team. 2.4 yards per carry against the Browns, which is a good defense. So I'm not watching the Patriots games. Are the holes just not opening up? Does he not look fast? I mean, what are your thoughts here?
I think he's probably prioritizing keeping a handle on the football. I really think that's part of it, right? Being a little bit gun shy. But I'll also say Trevion Henderson got more run this week than he has in any game thus far this season. So I think that's a part of it too. But it's a very balanced attack, and I think some of it's circumstantial. I would argue that Ramondre is consistently running very well, and I don't think it has too much to do with him individually. But Trevion has a little more quickness, right? And so I think in certain matchups, he's going to make more sense. But I'm not overly concerned. Antonio Gibson was a big loss. He was a big piece of that backfield. So I think Ramondre is necessary, but I also wouldn't be. I think Trevion Henderson benefited from having Quishon Judkins, his college teammate, on the other side, giving him a little momentum. So I think Trevion Henderson is a big piece of that, but I'm not too concerned overall with Ramondre. I don't care if it's 2 yards of carry as long as he doesn't spit the fucking football in the field.
Got you. Yeah, that should be the priority for sure. If you were still alive in Circa Survivor, and if you had the Patriots available, would you consider them here in this spot against the Falcons, low owned?
I would. I think it's a zigzag spot. That would be the only real consideration. And the Patriots, to me, are becoming a good option every week. And the thing about this team, you see, they have a margin for error. Myles Garrett had 5 sacks last week. Drake May threw the worst interception, in my opinion, that he's thrown in his whole career. But it doesn't fucking matter. It is such an out-of-body experience watching this Patriots team. It feels almost like these Brady teams where it's like you're going to blow people out every week. Even if you believe the Falcons can play a great game, right? It's a very good defense, right? But Patriots won 5 straight against the spread. I'd be leaning towards laying the 5.5. But what I will say, as much as I'm bullish on the Patriots, you talk about a 10-foot pole game. And I don't want to give you a 10-foot pole game that there's no way, but this is actually my 10-foot pole game on the Patriots. Because to me, as bullish as I am and as good of a run as they are on, this Atlanta team is one of those very unpredictable teams. And if Penix comes back, given how astute, this is the best passing defense in all of football. The Patriots running game is not nearly as good as their passing game. So I guess for me, I love the Patriots. I like them to cover the 5.5. However, I don't like them. I like them as a zigzag in Survivor, but I think there could be an element of risk. But I tell you, Tony, I believe this is one of the best teams in football in New England. So it's not going to surprise me if they roll again.
We saw producer Mike pull up the 0 Dark 30 graphic. I said on last week's show, I alluded to that game, and I said it's tough to trust the Falcons knowing that they're capable of a 0 Dark 30. And sure enough, they come up with, as I said on Twitter, the sequel to Zero Dark 30, where they just don't show up and they put in that kind of effort. For me, I'm going to say the Falcons, and I'm also going to put the Cowboys in this category. These are two teams I don't want to be playing against because while they can look really bad, I think the ceiling for those two teams, Dallas and Falcons, when things are going right, like Bijan, when he is running the ball, the Falcons offense looks unstoppable, right? So if you're only going to get that 30% of the time out of the Falcons, I don't want to be facing them on one of those weeks where he's in a good mood and having a good game. So for me, I want to try to go the rest of the season without fading teams like the Falcons and the Cowboys because they scare me because they can be so explosive when things are going well on offense.
Very well put. And, you talked last week about the Browns being the best defense that the Patriots had faced. Gosh, I'm sitting there feeling bad for Myles Garrett, just being one of the greatest players of all time being on that team. But that Cleveland defense, right? I don't think they may be very good in certain ways, but I think that Atlanta defense potentially could present even more problems for the Patriots. This week is in any given Sunday league. So I like the Patriots -5.5, but it's not going to shock me if they give one back amidst this great run.
Yep, absolutely. We got a comment here from Rick wanting to know my entry name. DD3's Revenge. There's an apostrophe S. By the way, that's named after my best friend who's passed away, Dan Donahue III. DD3's Revenge. That is the name of my entry. Feel free to follow along on Survivor Adley.
So I never disclosed the name of our entry, and it wasn't intentional, but the irony is, for those of you UFC fans who saw the heavyweight championship end in a no contest with the eye poke, the name of our fucking entry was Aspinall in.
Oh,
so
no way.
We went out. Motherfucker, that just came to my attention now. I know I'm cursing a lot today to be expected after being eliminated.
I thought you were going to say the name of your entry was eye poke. I was like, what? You got to be kidding me.
No, Aspinall in.
Oh, I love that. Love that. That's clever. 49ers at Giants. Remember back before week 1, I just alluded to our interview with Ken Rutgers, former Packers player. We also, that same day, we also had Grant Cohn on. 49ers beat writer, has been covering the team for like 20 years. He says the answer to that question, the team that scares him most this season for the 49ers was this week 9 game at the Giants. He warned us about it. He went into detail why. 49ers have some trauma with this field. It's the field that Nick Bosa got hurt on and had several other injuries as well. Cam Scatterbu out for the Giants. 98.5% of people have the 49ers available in this spot. It is a chance to get on an island. I don't think it's worth it, though. 10% chance of rain in this one. 49ers are just so banged up. They went into that game last week, we all know, without Nick Bosa, without Fred Warner. They lose D. Winters in this game. I'm not sure for how long yet. They lose Jordan Elliott. By the way, one of the downsides to doing this show on Tuesdays, we don't have the Wednesday injury reports. So normally I'd be able to tell you D. Winters was limited in practice today. We're going to see that information tomorrow. Bryce Huff is another name to keep an eye on, pass rusher for the 49ers. We'll see if he practices tomorrow and later this week. But as things stand right now, I couldn't get – that was a really disappointing game for the 49ers last week. I lost some money on that game. The effort that they put out there was really disappointing against the Texans team that has a bad offensive line. So that one surprised me. I have no interest in the 49ers or Giants in Circa Survivor. How about you?
Totally agree. And I felt as though I feel like sometimes in this league you get – I think Houston was at the height of desperation. And I think against the San Francisco team, and when we talked about I liked San Francisco as well. I bet on San Francisco as well, but I'm sure it didn't. This league, this any given Sunday thing, I'm sure it didn't surprise you. Time of possession in that game for Houston, 41 minutes and 22 seconds, just insane. And it's so Robert Saleh, who I love. He looks older to me. He looks so stressed. I don't know if the Jets experience got to him.
Dude. You 100%. Sorry to interrupt you.
No,
he looked worse. When I first saw him on the sideline, his face looked puffy.
I know.
I was like, was he out partying? Did he not get a lot of sleep? So if you're not someone who sees Saleh every week, for me, that was like a 1 week thing. It's not like, oh, he's been aging all season long. That was like a weird thing. I'm like, I got to go back to Twitter and see if anybody else noticed that.
Okay. So, so that's why I made the comment, because that's what I noticed. And I'm used to this. And I remember sometimes when he flirted with growing a beard with the Jets, right? Where you see him clean shaven, looking like $1 million, but he didn't look like $1 million. Yeah, you're right. Maybe he was getting after it a little bit. But what I'll say, right? the fact that there were even mutters about a quarterback controversy at any point this season is so laughable to me as a Patriots fan watching Mac Jones, right? Like, I'm sorry, but like you talk about all these injuries, like if Brock Purdy returns this week, I'd peek real hard at that zigzag spot. And when Grant Cohn talked about liking or being afraid of the Giants in this spot, that was even before he maybe knew what Cam Scatterby was going to be, right?
True.
And I do think Tyrone Tracy did a lot of good last year. So maybe he can pick up the slack. But the bounce back spot for me for the 49ers, but I like the bounce back spot, but the health, Tony, I don't know if they're healthy enough to really, get aggressive.
At some point, those injuries, especially the cluster injuries now at the linebacker position on the defensive line, at some point those catch up to you. And I think that's what we saw a little bit of last week for sure. All right, moving on here. Colts at Steelers. Indy 2.1% owned. They are the lowest owned team in Circa Survivor. Only 44 entries have the Colts available. That means those 44 people made the bold choice to not use the Colts last week. I can't imagine if you're one of those 44 people that saved the Colts, that you saved them for this spot, right? Like if you saved them, maybe you're thinking week 10 against the Falcons, or maybe later in the season, there's an injury and you can use this really good team. I can't imagine anybody is going to be on the Colts this week. I think that would be a big mistake. By the way, 46% chance of rain in this game. So this one could be a sloppy game. If it is sloppy though, and it's a running game, Jonathan Taylor, how good is he playing? Jason, off subject real quick. Do you think a running back, Jonathan Taylor, is a legitimate MVP candidate? Would you vote for him if you had an MVP vote?
That's a great question. Of today, yes. Yes, absolutely. Today, typically the quarterback on the best team, and if you're saying they're the best team in football, right, typically it's a quarterback. Absolutely, 100%. But the thing about Jonathan Taylor is he hasn't always been healthy in his career. So let's see if he makes it through all 17.
Good call. And hey, that was on my mind. I did have a slight moment where I was like, do I want to save the Colts on one of my entries? And then I was like, you know what? If Daniel Jones or Jonathan Taylor go down, or even one of these offensive linemen, I'm going to really regret that. So I'm glad. Yeah, look at this future value for the Colts. It's just not what gets you excited. Again, week 10's tough. So maybe, I guess, the Jaguars at home, week 17 is maybe the next best one.
Nobody should have Indy left, right? I mean, can you imagine if you had Indy last week and you were eliminated on like Falcons or Bengals? Like
Jason, there was a lot of people in that boat, man. 189. I might be off by one or two, but about 189 people could have used the Colts and didn't. And a bunch of them went down on the Falcons and on the Bengals. That's a very real thing.
You asked me if I was jealous, and I said no. But Tony, if I had had the Colts available, there wouldn't have been a discussion. And you know that.
It'd be an easy. Yeah.
In terms of this game, right? Like, I just feel so bad for Aaron Rodgers. That's the theme for me. It's like he looks better than he's looked in a while, especially a couple weeks back. He's really moving well. But that Pittsburgh defense, like, what are your thoughts on this Pittsburgh defense? I mean,
I can't figure it out, man. I'm like, are some of these guys just like aging? Because you look at the names, especially these guys in the secondary, Jalen Ramsey, Darius Slay, and then the front seven. On paper, this should be an absolutely dominant defense. And not for a second will I consider that motivation is a problem when you have one of the best motivational head coaches in the NFL, and Mike Tomlin. So I don't have an explanation. Like I don't have time to look at tape and figure it out, to be frank with you. But I want to. I'm curious myself because they are just underperforming, especially against the run. It's really, really interesting. Here's a theory. And this might be off base because, again, I haven't looked that closely at the tape. But what if they have too many guys in that front seven that are pass rushers and are not run stuffers? They're these guys that are putting up stats, names that we all know. Watt, Highsmith. They bring in this guy Harmon, who's a great pass rusher, great rookie pass rusher. He's got a couple sacks already. I got to go on Pro Football Focus and see, like, how good is this guy against the run? Like, maybe that's the problem. And teams are taking advantage of that weakness. But that's just a theory. I don't know what the hell's wrong with the Steelers, and I'm curious myself.
It's fascinating. I do think there are certain spots where I'm watching TJ Watt, and I'm like, all right, well, yeah, you're explosive and amazing, but 70% of the plays, you're a non-factor and are eliminated right away, at least for my eyeballs.
Yep. Absolutely. All right, next up.
One more, 1 o'clock.
Chargers at Titans. This is another one of those big three that we alluded to because it's going to be extremely popular this week. Before I get into this game, I want to ask producer Mike to pull up that graphic that we prepared showing the Chargers and Rams options this week on the left with the Chargers and Rams options next week on the right. And I want to keep this on the screen for a little bit here. Because my question for you, Jason, because this is the question that a lot of people are asking themselves. Remember last week, the question was Cincy or Atlanta? That was the popular query. This week, it's Chargers or Rams, both LA teams, because they are the two biggest favorites, not just in this week, but later on, in week 13. So remember we talked about that swap maneuver earlier in the year? We were going to coin that phrase, the LMS swap. This is an opportunity. If you've got, say, 2 entries left, or you got 4 entries left, take 2 on the Chargers this week and 2 on the Rams in week 13, or 3 and 1, and then 1 and 3 the following weeks. But isolated, Jason, let's get Circa Survivor out of our minds for 1 second. Let's get the win probabilities, the point spreads out of our mind for a second, and let's get the projections out of our mind for a second. Would you rather have Chargers against the Titans this week and Rams-Panthers next week, or Rams over the Saints this week, but then you have to use the Chargers against the Raiders in week 13? Which of those pairings do you like best? It's tough.
It's such a great question, and I hate to have to answer it because it's so tough. I would love to play the Chargers this week, but to answer your question, I would have to go Rams this week and Chargers the following weeks because you got Rico Dowdle in my head. I'm thinking Rams and Panthers, and it's far enough down the road that I think some of these football teams go through evolutions during the season, and Bryce Young didn't necessarily jump off the screen for me, but was doing a lot of things well. And who knows if that game might have been closer without Andy Dalton there. He seems to be done. So I don't know. I guess for me, that Rams-Panthers game is a little too far away, but it would be very difficult for me if I was alive to not play the Chargers this week, given the fact that I believe the Titans are going to go 1-16.
Yeah, and we got a comment coming in here. Let's keep this graphic up for a second because I want to keep talking about this. We got a comment coming here. I would choose home teams. So that makes you not like the Rams at the Panthers. And as I said, the Panthers are a lot tougher at home. Guys, go out and look. Go out and look at the home road splits for Bryce Young. Go ahead and look at the home road splits for the Panthers. It's a glaring difference here. If you look at those 4 games, would you agree with me that the Rams at Panthers is the most concerning?
Yes.
Of the 4?
100%.
And maybe that's a reason to take the Rams this week.
It's a great point.
Because of these 4, I'm working through this with you guys now. Of those 4, that's the most concerning. A couple other notes about these 4 games. So the Rams are off a bye right now this week. The Chargers have extra rest because they played on Thursday this week. And then that week 13 scenario where the Chargers play the Raiders, Chargers are off a bye. So they're going to have extra rest going into that. So of these 4, not only is the Rams-Panthers game a little bit more of a concern, but it's also the only game where one of these 4 teams doesn't have extra rest. So I think the Rams game is the worst of these 4. That makes me want to take the Rams this week and the Chargers later. Thoughts?
I couldn't agree more with every word out of your mouth. What I will say is as we peak toward week 13, I do think there will be some spots. For example, week 13, 49ers at Browns. I think there's a great chance, depending on the health of the 49ers, that maybe they're still in it and some better spots appear in those weeks.
Good point.
I think your point, if I was sitting here with an entry, you would have sold me on going with the Rams this week, even though I like the Chargers a lot more. And I shouldn't say a lot more. I like both those teams, both LA teams getting through this week. But I believe that Rams at Panthers, your points are so well taken. I do not want to be sitting there with Rams at Panthers because I still believe in the Panthers a smidge.
Yeah, and I do too at home. And when Bryce Young is healthy, I think that team can be dangerous and upset the apple cart and kind of be the fly in the ointment a little bit. But going back to this specific game, 18% chance of rain in this one. If I didn't say this already, 97.3% of people have the Chargers available. that's something to consider too. A few more people have the Chargers available this week than have the Rams available. We'll get to their specific availability here in a bit. As I mentioned, the Chargers do have a little bit of extra rest in this one. The Titans, I don't think anybody would argue with me, are one of the worst teams in the NFL, arguably the worst team in the NFL, and they just traded one of their best cornerbacks, Roger McCreary, to the Rams. They also cut Tyler Lockett, who wasn't doing much in that offense, but I'd have to say he's an upgrade from the rest of that wide receiver group. So they cut a somewhat-ish productive player on offense and one of their best cornerbacks. The Titans are getting worse, and the Chargers are getting better because they got Joe Alt back. We saw on Thursday this offense looks completely different with Joe Alt. So I do feel good about the Chargers in this one. However, there is a revenge game for Mike McCoy, the new coach, the interim coach of the Titans, who was fired in 2016 by the Chargers. So he may be spending a little extra time studying the tape and looking at things, finding angles, ways that he can win this game. So just FYI.
I like that. Well, that's a great point. And McCoy, when he made his interim coaching debut this season against the Patriots, first 10 minutes, right? First 15 plays, I tell you what, I started to fear the Titans. But after those 5 plays, it's been all downhill for that team. And I just think it's so funny. The elimination at Arizona week 5. All these people, right? It's flipped this whole contest. I really do believe this Titans team is headed for, I'm not sure, to win another game. Anything else from you on that?
No, sure.
All right. That does it for the 1 o'clock games. Let's get to our friends at Race Oracle.
Attention racing fans. If you want an edge at the track, you need Race Oracle. This subscription service uses advanced AI modeling built on over 200,000 historical races, crunching hundreds of data points from weather and track conditions to jockey history and speed ratings. Race Oracle gives you proprietary win percentages, Kelly betting strategies, and live odds tracking, covering every race in North America, plus the UK and Ireland, so you can bet around the clock with confidence. Don't guess, predict smarter. Subscribe today and start betting with data, not luck.
I think I'm going to bet on some ponies this weekend, Tony. Maybe take a little breather from the National Football League. But I tell you, man, you can tell, right? Like, I was wondering if I would lose any juice on this contest. Like, yeah, I'm pissed I'm not in it, but I still think I got some juice, don't you think?
Absolutely, man. Well, you came in hot with this show for sure. So yeah, you got
give me the solo for my juice, Mike.
Absolutely.
All right, first 4 o'clock game, Tone. Saints
at Rams. There's no secret. I like the Rams a lot in this spot. It's hard not to. I am going to try to give you some anti-Rams arguments, though, just to make this show more well-rounded and give some people something to think about as they're trying to make this Rams-Chargers decision. My mind's made up. I like the Rams more than the Chargers, but Sean McVay is not impressive off of a bye. He's 5-3 straight up, 3-5 ATS off a bye. Last 4 off of a bye, 2-2 straight up, 0-4 ATS. So just FYI on that, he's not exactly Andy Reid off a bye. That point that I made last week about, hey, how can you click that button on the Falcons and not have 0 dark 30 on your mind, knowing that they're capable of that? Do you have the Rams game against the 49ers on your mind? That game that they were, I think, 9-ish point favorites, something like that. Niners were completely banged up, had no reason to win that game, and the Rams just gave them the game. The Rams are capable of that, and I wonder if that might be in the back of people's minds as they make that decision.
Coming off a bye, facing Tyler. Oh, shuck, right? Oh, shucks. Is that the guy, right?
Yep.
There is no way. And also, Tony, this may be a little bit of that sort of intangible argument from me, but when you have a spot like that, like the Rams, and you do it once, I think it's enough of a wake-up call to not do it again. And I think this Rams team, I should have checked on Nakua's health. I don't even think it matters. I just think they are a superior team. And maybe McVay's not great off a bye, but I think the rest for the players matter. So I like the Rams quite a bit here.
Absolutely. One other anti-Rams thing I'll throw in there. Again, full transparency. I do like the Rams. Last year, the Rams were 3-point favorites against this Saints team. And granted, it was on the road, and this game is at home. So a little different situation. But the Rams trailed 6-0 at halftime. And it was 7-6 going into the fourth quarter. So the Saints, as underdogs, played this Rams team really tough last year. Just wanted to throw that out there as well. But I like him. It's a great spot. I like you bringing up the fact that it's a new quarterback with Shuck. And Shuck can't be that good, Jason, right? Because if they made the decision to start the year that Rattler was the guy over Shuck and Rattler wasn't much,
right?
Shuck mustn't have looked that good in training camp. I didn't hear things like I did with Drake May about, oh, he's good, but we don't want to rattle his confidence. The offensive line's bad. We don't want him to get hurt. I wasn't hearing that. It seemed like Shuck wasn't ready week 1. So it makes me a little skeptical of how good he could possibly be week 9.
Totally agree. Tony, so I was just looking down at, this is my document, this 2025 schedule. Okay. And I should, it's a great, it's since I've had, and I highlighted one team per week on this particular schedule. So when I went down and saw Rams home to New Orleans, and then I looked back at week 8 and see the Bills highlighted at Carolina. I this is taking me back a little bit. That's what's just killing me. That component of it. It is what it is. All right, Jaguars.
For those of you who missed the top of the show, Jason had an opportunity, could have taken the Bills. But didn't. So rewind and watch that over to know what we're referring to. But yeah, that's tough to see your own notes from earlier in this season. That's brutal. Jaguars at Raiders. If you believe the Raiders are one of the worst teams in the NFL, and I think most people would agree with me there that they're one of the worst teams, and now you're going up against the Jaguars team, which I think most people think is an above average team. Both teams off a bye here. The Raiders, by the way, are the recipients of Tyler Lockett, who I mentioned was cut by the Titans. So he's now reunited with Geno Smith and Pete Carroll. I don't know how up to speed he's going to be on the playbook, et cetera, this week, but a little bit of an upgrade there. For me, Jason, I can't trust the Jaguars in this spot. I just can't. I got a bad feeling about it. I'm a numbers guy, but sometimes the intuition kicks in, and I got a bad feeling about the Jaguars in this spot. Brock Bowers' health, though, is going to go a long way for me. Whether or not he plays, he was doubtful the last time the Raiders played. They've now had a week to recover. We'll see if he's available or not. The Jaguars, I'd also say, have sneaky future value moving forward. They're not a Patriots team that has a ton of future value, but they play the Titans week 13 and week 18. They play the Jets week 15. Some nice little spots here for a Jaguars team that's not an elite team, but can have some value for you in Circa Survivor moving forward. I think we're going to see a large handful of people, 1 to 2%, trust the Jaguars here in this spot against the Raiders. Would you?
Definitely not. I think there's a reason they're only 3-point favorites or whatever at one of the worst teams in football. So, Tony, Jacksonville, right? Week 5, they beat Kansas. Back-to-back weeks 4 and 5. They go at San Francisco and win. Then they win at home against Kansas City, and they go to 4-1. And you and I both said on this show their next game was home to Seattle. We both said we like Seattle in that game. Jacksonville's not near the worst 4-1 team I've ever seen, right? I remember Mac Jones' first year, the Patriots were 9-4. And I'm a Patriots fan. I was like, this is the worst 1-seed 9-4 team I've ever seen in my life. I don't think this Jacksonville team. I'm starting to question Liam Cohen a little bit. I think he does some things right, but then he does some things wrong. So look, the Raiders are very fadeable to me, but their last game, that loss at home, was, I think they're off a bye, but 35-7 at home to the Rams. I wouldn't trust them at all.
I'm with you on that. Let's move on here. Chiefs, Bills. Chiefs 57.3% available. Play both holidays, of course. Bills only 32% available. That number's getting really low. 64% chance of rain in this one. Jason, this is that quintessential game. It seems like there's one every week. You and I talk about no interest in Circa Survivor because of future value, etc. But what a game from an NFL fan standpoint. The two guys at the top of the odds board for MVP. This game may decide, assuming these guys stay healthy for the rest of the year, this game may decide who the MVP of the NFL is if it's not Drake May. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I like the Bills side of it. +2, tease it up to +8 for a teaser leg maybe, but zero interest in Circa Survivor. How about you?
Totally agree. I think we're getting this game at the absolute perfect time. Like, these games are always great, Chiefs, Bills, but this one feels like the timing is sort of extra special given that both teams have had bits of struggles, right? I would be surprised if we see a single entry in Survivor on either side here, similar to week 1 when you had Ravens at Bills. And if that game didn't prove anything you need to know, Baltimore completely dominant, spitting the ball up is why they lose. But in terms of just giving you, right, in terms of a feel for this game, I lean Buffalo in this game. And then when they meet in January, Kansas City again.
Fair enough. Hey, the Chiefs have knocked the Bills out of the playoffs. Fact check me on this. I believe 2020, 2021, 2023, and 2024. I think 4 of the last 5 times
I think you're right.
the Bills have got knocked out of the playoffs. It's been to the Chiefs. So maybe a little bit of a revenge angle for the Bills as well. Sunday Night Football, Seattle.
Hey, can I just ask you quickly, though?
Yeah.
Even though maybe I think you said you sort of like the Bills a little bit, right? But you're not betting on that game heavily, even if you lean Bills, or are you?
Yeah, I've got a unit on the Bills side.
All right.
And then I've got a small teaser as well. It's definitely not heavily, but yeah.
So while I lean Bills, I don't know if I'd go to the window with it. That's why I asked you the question, just given how the Chiefs are playing on both sides. But I like the conviction.
Yeah, the Bills showed me a lot last week. The one thing that does make me a little nervous is Ed Oliver, defensive tackle for the Bills, getting hurt. But the Chiefs are banged up on their offensive line as well. Pacheco just got banged up too. So I don't know that they're going to be able to take too much advantage of the Bills' rush defense that seemed improved last week. So that's a little bit of my thinking here with liking the Bills side. But Seattle at Washington, Sunday Night Football, 45.5% available. I'll tell you what, Seattle's another one of those teams in Circa Survivor I wish I had, right behind the Lions, who you heard me talk about earlier. I like Seattle a lot in this spot. I probably wouldn't fire away even if I had them, because Seattle, especially for that large group of people who have used both the Broncos and the Bills, is viable against the Cardinals in week 10. They've got the Titans in week 12. They've got the Falcons in week 14 and the Panthers in week 17. Tons of future value for Seattle. And again, only 45.5% available. So this isn't where I would use it. I'd save it for later because there's other options this week. But if you want to zig while others are zagging, I don't mind taking Seattle here. Again, it's early in the week. It's only Tuesday, so we don't have the benefit of these injury reports. So I don't know how healthy Jaden Daniels is going to be, et cetera. But assuming he's out, love Seattle.
Yeah, short week for the Commanders too. And, Jaden Daniels, whether, if he plays, I think that certainly could move the needle. But, if you have either LA team available, you shouldn't be looking at Seattle here, in my opinion.
100% agree with you there. Cardinals at Cowboys, Monday Night Football, Arizona 31.3% available. Dallas, 81% available. Dallas plays on both holidays, albeit probably in the underdog role in both of those games. Still nice to have them in your back pocket in case there's an injury or in case you want to get cute on one of those holidays. The Dallas defense is so bad. I could talk for an hour about how awful they are. I'm not touching this one in Circa Survivor or betting-wise, Jason, because nothing would surprise me in this game. If I came to you next week and said Dallas won by 20, not a surprise. If I came to you and said Arizona won by 20 because that Dallas defense is so bad, not a surprise. Close game, not a surprise. I got no feel for this one whatsoever.
I totally agree. I think last week I happened to be on Denver, right? And a lot of people like Dallas. I just thought Denver was going to put together a complete football game. I think I alluded to that on this show. But Dallas, for me, this is one of those, I like them a lot in this spot, but it's an intangible thing, Tony. It's looking at the board and saying, I think Dallas bounces. I think they do enough on offense and maybe cover up some stuff on defense, but trusting them, zero, and that Cardinals team is wildly unpredictable. But I when I see Cowboys -2.5, it's hard for me not to look pretty hard there because I'm not sure the Cardinals keep up.
Yep. Good call. All right, let's talk about our splash contest, Jason.
Yes.
We got to make 3 picks this week. We had a dud last week. We needed to make 2, and the Bengals took us out. So this is the extra bloody Survivor contest over at Splash Sports.
So, Tone, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, like, the big 3, it would be easy just to say Packers, Chargers, Rams, done. Our work is done here, right? But knowing that the Chargers and Rams have a lot of future value in week 13, I'd like to use only one of those 2 LA teams if possible.
Totally agree. My thoughts when we have 3 teams is sort of 2 what we deem to be locks and then 1 zigzag pick where we sort of decide on a game that maybe we like to go against the grain. What do you think?
I like it, man. How about a Rams and Packers, which would be sort of the locks.
Yep.
We skip the Chargers because we're going to save them for week 13 if this thing's still rolling by then. Which, gosh, I mean, 3 picks a week. I don't know where are we gonna. What's this thing gonna look like week 13?
Right.
But what would be another game? Can I interest you in the
ahead.
Jaguars at all?
That's an interesting point, even though I just shit on them. You know, I want to save the Patriots. There's a part of me that just wants to play the Bears just to root against the Bengals this Sunday because that would have been a lot more fun last week. But no, I kind of like Jacksonville, Tony, even because it's a zigzag spot. And as much as I don't like that team overall, I like them more than I like the Raiders. So I kind of like that one, Tony.
All right, let's take the Jaguars, and if it loses because of the Jaguars, you can blame me. You can blame me for crashing us into the iceberg.
No, that's a good spot off a bye. I like that.
Yeah, that's what plans to go with. And we're going to do this every week. We're going to let you guys know what we're on in this extra Bloody Survivor contest, assuming we win this week. Hopefully we do. And as we always say every show, we may change our pick if there's an injury news or something like that. Don't hold us to it, but 99% sure this is where we will land for this week.
I got one more question for you.
Yeah.
So obviously this season has been an ebb and flow, right? When the Cardinals go out week 5, probably a stab in the stomach to Tony, right? But I have to think, I know you respect me and maybe you're trying to curb your enthusiasm a little bit, but I have to think that given the funkiness of this year, you couldn't be happier with where you're at right now off of just a wild week 8.
Yeah, all you can ask for in Circa Survivor when almost 90% of the field is to be knocked out is to, one, be alive, right? And hopefully be ahead of the game equity-wise. And as I mentioned, I've got 10 entries in my name, DD3's Revenge. I have some partners out there who I work closely with, and we're ahead of the game equity-wise. And that's all you can ask for at this point. So, going into last week, I was a little behind equity-wise, and now I'm way ahead equity-wise. So last week was a big swing for me, for sure. So feel great where I'm at. Famous last words. I don't want to say anything too confident about these next 2 weeks, but I have available, my partners have available either Green Bay, LA, and both LA teams on every single entry. And then going into week 10, besides one entry, we've got Denver and Buffalo available as well. So I feel good, but Circa Survivor can humble you so quickly.
Yep.
So quickly. Would anybody be totally shocked if these 3 big favorites all went down this week? Like from what we see in the NFL, crazy shit happens. So I feel really okay today, but I'm holding back a little bit, mainly because I don't want to say something stupid on tape and talk about how confident I am, and then next week the NFL humbles me and I look like an idiot. So yeah.
No, I hear you, but I feel as though getting through certain weeks are not plateaus. They are step ups. And I feel like getting through this week was a very big step up given how your board laid out.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It was a pivotal week, and glad it worked out the way that it did. I'm excited, though, to get some cash with you here in this extra Bloody Survivor contest. This is the first time I've ever done a Survivor pool where you got to pick 3 picks every week. So I need to also spend some time thinking about the strategy of it. Like how long is this thing going to go? Right? Like I got some questions that I need to answer, and I need to sit down with a grid and know how many people are going to be in this contest when it closes to think more about strategy. But I'm super pumped about hopefully taking that entry to the promised land with you.
We do got to map it out. We don't want to get to week 14 and have to play like Tennessee, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
We got to be careful.
Exactly. So maybe a little willy-nilly this week, but next week we'll come prepared with, especially when we know how many people are in it. That's a big variable, Jason, right? That's gonna decide a lot for sure.
But I do think we put a little strategy in today, right? Because if we go all chalk, right? Now we got the Chargers available to us, right? We could have thrown the Patriots in instead of the Jaguars. Patriots going to have plenty of future value too. So I like how we handled it.
Go Jaguars. Let's do it. All right. If you guys are watching this show for the first time, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. This show will be available in a day or two on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, iHeartRadio, all that sort of stuff. So feel free to watch over there as well. And if you're not following it already on Twitter, @LastMenPod, we'd love for you to follow us there as well. But the likes on YouTube go a long way. So we really appreciate that. Thank you guys so much. We will see you back next week on Wednesday, not Tuesday, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Take care.